Hello, and welcome to our next presentation. On behalf of the MIT CDOIQ Virtual Symposium, we would like to thank all of our sponsors who have continued to support the symposium during this very challenging year. Before we thank our partners, we'd like to ask that sometime during the symposium's breaks that you visit our partners' virtual booths. You can also visit the Content Hub on the MIT CDOIQ website for some great partner resources. We'd like to thank the following partners: Deloitte, Informatica, Privacy Analytics, Dawex, Fusion Alliance, KPMG, Sandal Consultants, Tamer, Elation, Ali Data, Big ID, Boomi, Caserta, Citizen, Data Kitchen, Garage, Wakira, Pylog, Click, ThoughtSpot, Eckerson, Global IDs, Snowflake, Starburst. And as I said, please make every effort to visit our partners, use the virtual passport, because without them and our partner support, the symposium could not be held. Thank you.
So I hope you see my screen. And thank you very much for having us today. And let's start immediately.
Yes. So data is often granted many different metaphors, such as oil or blood, but perhaps data can be seen as something a little more delightful, for example, chocolate. Recent mention by Forbes magazine, data, as well as chocolate, comes in many different quantities and different fillings. We also know that, like life, data is like a box of chocolate, and it sure is better when shared. My name is Høyer, and as mentioned, I'm a data exchange advisor at Dawex. And with me today, I have Didier Navez. And Didier, you can present yourself.
Thank you, Anne. So nice to meet you. My name is Didier Navez, and I've been in the company since the early days of Dawex. I used to work before that in research firm Gartner and Forrester, and would like to share today our experience with what is becoming very popular as a concept, as a name, data exchange. And I would like to start by saying just a few words regarding Dawex, who we are and why we are in that business. Dawex was founded in 2015 with the sole mission of facilitating data exchange, actually accelerating the circulation of data between organizations, any types of organization. And why we have built that business? Because we were looking at what's going on the market, the explosion of the data being produced by organizations. Think IoT sensors, huge amounts of data being produced. We also observed the huge increase of the data demand, think AI, machine learning. And what we were also seeing is that a single organization, even if it was producing a lot of data, was not capable of achieving the business use case that they wanted to do only with their own data. They had to access data from the outside. And it's challenging because there are many questions related to that. And that's why we decided that it was needed to have some technology, some platform, some space, some place, safe place for organization to meet, exchange data. And that's why we have built actually a double offering. The first one is the technology that we have been building. It's a data exchange platform technology that we actually license to corporates, consortiums, public organizations that they want to operate themselves, create and operate their own data exchange, data marketplace. And at the same time, we have been using our technology. So among the various implementation of data exchanges and data marketplace, one of them is operated by us. And it's today the largest community of organizations that are interested in exchanging data, sourcing, distributing, sharing data. And we'll speak more about it later on. And
thank you.
Oh, yeah, I was seeing you and speaking, but I couldn't hear you. I guess you were just, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, actually, let me introduce what we mean by data exchange. First of all, we picked up the term data exchange more than data marketplace because we thought it was a more powerful concept, because data exchange is at the same time the process of exchanging data, but it's also the place where data can be exchanged. And our observation, especially with the marketplace that we launched in 2017, is that basically data exchanging are happening globally. They are not knowing what a border is. So it's really cross-border data exchange that we're observing. That's the first observation that was very interesting after a few years of operation. And the second is that most interactions and exchange that are happening between organizations from multiple industry sectors. And why? It makes sense. It makes sense because an organization may be reluctant sometimes to share data with an organization of the same sector of activity for the risk of leaving your data at the competition. And why it's cross-border, it's logical too in a way, because organizations are becoming more and more global, the economy is global, and data circulate. And it's happening every day since 2017. We see lots of conversation, interactions on the marketplace that we operate from companies from very different horizons. Here, this is a real conversation between a leading French retailer being approached by a big hedge funds in the US. It's here another company, which is a fintech in France, discussing with a potential buyer in a university is looking for certain type of data from that company for a research project. So many situations are happening like that. And so if I had to structure this a little bit and look at the benefits that can be generated by a better circulation and facilitated access to data, we can start by the fact that I was mentioning that companies have access today to lots of data internally and potentially a lot of external data too. And what are the benefits that can be derived? They can be of different nature. And they have directly an impact from a financial perspective on organization. And let's start looking at the revenue side. By considering data as an asset and start commercializing it, at least some of those data, it's possible for organizations to generate a new revenue stream, completely new revenue stream, building new business inside their business. But it can be also increasing their existing revenue streams by just improving the customer experience, for example, thanks to data, which will enable to win and retain more customers, or even to create new types of products and services which are data-driven. But revenue is not the only thing. It's also about costs. It's clear that data can help improving dramatically business processes in all parts of the organizations. And if we just zoom on the data workers within an organization, there's an interesting study from IDC that says that 51% of the time of the data teams is wasted in searching data, while these people, who are generally expensive people, should spend more time in working and using the data rather than searching for it. So optimizing that process of accessing the data is becoming very, very important. Revenue, cost, and that's not all. There's also the risk factor. The the world is becoming more and more regulated in certain industries, and data is also more and more regulated. It started with the GDPR in Europe, and different countries like Japan or California with CCPA, South Korea with PIPA laws, and many other countries are following, are structuring and regulating the exchange and sharing of data. And that creates friction points, that creates a potential issue when companies are concerned that they might not comply with certain rules and regulations. So having an organized way, in the way that organized process, in the way that data are being exchanged, are a way to lower the risk. And last but not least, I'd like to say a few words about also some very interesting observations that are made by research firms and consultancy organizations like BCG, for example, that was mentioning the impact on the valuation of companies of being data savvy in a certain way. Gartner did also the same observation. So it's very important to see that a company that is really perceived as a data savvy company, data driven organization, will be better value as an organization globally than a competitor that would be less data savvy. So that's an important element to look at. But this being said, I think we might like to illustrate now with a few examples of use cases that are generating those kinds of benefits.
Exactly. Thank you for that, Didier. So first, to highlight that all single standing organizations will not have the adequate data to build truly data-driven business cases. For this, they will have to have shared data. Let's go into some examples that we've been working on at Dawex. One of them is within property and real estate development. Some of the initial business cases can be answered through data, might be where is the right location to build or to acquire a property? When is the right time to trigger the development? But also, when should I divest or capture the value of the assets in the properties? So you can have, these companies can have data from traditional data sources such as research and data specialists, even citizen and governments for insights. Here they traditionally look at vacancy rates, medium household incomes, but also a number of different permits that have been issued in the area. So these are the classical cases that are being built up and often used in real estate developers or portfolio holders or investors. But if we see here on the left side, the different shade of the green on the left, the utility information, the different mapping of services, the telcos and manufacturers is an alternative source of data that can help answer more questions. So here they can potentially have a look of what are the coffee shops around this new area that we are looking into. What are the Yelp reviews on those? Are they good? How many 4-star hotels do we have? And this can give us a little bit of a different insight in the investments that are going to be made in the area. And that's not only interesting for the real estate companies, that's also interesting for other clients. And this is where the coming together of the data suddenly extends into completely new industries and business cases. And that could be something like governments and transportation, how to predict the traffic flows in the new areas. But also, for example, if you're a bank, you want to set up a new ATM, you can pinpoint the exact right place to do this.
Thank you. And that's another example also that we've been working on. It's an interesting one. It's a reinsurance company, so the customers are insurers, and they've made a deal with their clients. They're collecting raw data about claims, portfolio from the various insurance company, and with their data team, the reinsurance company is producing some insights, claims metrics, but they're also doing work on impact simulation and of natural disasters and so on. And they are sharing back those insights free of charge with their insurance clients. But they realized that these insights could also be very valuable to others. So it could be for their non-client, which are insurance company, but local collectivities or real estate or construction company may be interested to know about these insights. As you can see, there's a flow of data from various parties that are relevant in their business case. Another example is with a large investment bank. It's just a sell-side bank, and they have their clients, which are their buy-side customer, hedge funds, asset management, and these clients ask questions to the research analysts from the investment bank. And every question, most of the question today can be answered using data science. So they are building insights by using thousands and thousands of existing data sources, but also continuously finding new data sources. And these insights are then integrated into their research and delivered to the clients. But what they've seen during that process is that basically there's a lot of untapped data insights on companies and sectors that they were not using. They were producing lots of things, and just a portion was used in their research and reports to their customer. So there was a lot of untapped value there. And the new business opportunity was really to package ready collected, ready cleansed data insights and to market to new types of customers, not only the big hedge funds and asset management firms, but any other companies and corporates that will be interested. Again, we see that data, there's untapped value, and when you start circulating the data, not only inside the organization, but outside the organization, it's creating value.
Exactly. So a fourth example would be from the automotive industry. And the automotive industry, there are many data generating parts of this value chain. If we take the example from the aftermarket, distributors and the service providers, these have a very unique position as they're right in the midst of it to act as data orchestrators as well. This is a unique standpoint in the midst of the industry. They can obtain data from many different sources. They can obtain data from the car itself, from the vehicle. They also have geographical localizations or geodata from the car and from the clients. But they also know about loyalty programs of the car's owners, the vehicles, and the repair and the service history. Now, if you combine this with information such as performance of the supplier, the behavior of the client, you suddenly get a lot of different insights. And again, we extend out of the normal industries that we think about would be the car suppliers, the OEMs, leasing and dealerships. We now go into new markets, such as retailers, such as tourism. In tourism industry, you would understand how people are behaving and moving when the car has been ready to, for example, go to colder areas for skiing seasons. You can use this information to predict where people and how they're moving. And this is a completely industry, but again, taking the center of the industry here, in this case, is the aftermarket, understanding and distributing, organizing the data from many different sources. So just, Didier, maybe you can give us a summary of all these examples we've been going through and see how organizations can place themselves in this ecosystem.
Yes, let's do that. Actually, we'll discussing, and we have actually many other examples of companies that we are working with, discussing with, and so on. And there are some patterns there. So we see organizations that are engaging in data exchange for different reasons. The first one, which is mentioned here, is that when an organization, not necessarily thinking about monetizing data or whatever, their first challenge is about organizing their sourcing. They're acquiring data from multiple data sources. They don't have a single view. Generally, large organization with multiple subsidiaries, division, countries, they may not have a single view of what they're doing in terms of sourcing data. They're not only looking at the data, but looking also at the condition under which these data have been acquired. Another type of situation and scenario that we're seeing is that when organizations start seeing the data as a valuable asset and they see the opportunity to make it available to others. Therefore, it's the whole aspects of distributing their own data. And there's another scenario also that we see increasingly more often is organizations that see the opportunity to be the center of the picture by launching and operating their own data exchange so that they can invite providers and they can invite companies that are willing to acquire some data. And it's not only focused on their own data and for data for their own sake, for their own usage, but also to be really the orchestrator of the marketplace. And these different scenarios can be implemented with different scope. It can be focused on just internally, generally large organizations that see the interest in organizing data exchanges from different perspectives or launching an internal marketplace. They can look at it internally, but more often now it's obviously extending in the external space by joining external company into the picture. And if I want to now look a little bit further on what this capability of data exchange is and what it should cover, we should look at it like that. So there's a data supply side on the one side and the data demand on the other side. And implementing capabilities on data exchange is about providing a number of functions to the data suppliers to package and describe what they have as data product, to publish it on a safe place to others, to engage in discussions, negotiation, to licensing the data, and to distribute it so the data must move, and also to get paid if there is any money transaction attached. And on the acquirer side, it's all about search and discovery. It's about contacting, assessing, discussing, negotiating, licensing, acquiring, and paying if any payment involved. This is about what you have to put in place when you put in place a formal data exchange capability in your organization. And it needs to, for this to work, it needs to be complying with a number of key principles. You need to create trust. Any marketplace, any exchange, if you don't have trust between the participants, it will not work. It will not scale. So the trust factor can be achieved, for example, by vetting all participants. It needs also to be based on the principle that the parties keep full control over what they do on the marketplace, on the exchange. So the data supplier want to deal directly with the data acquirer and decide who they're actually interacting with and how they are dealing with the other party. No middleman involved. And obviously, it is obvious, it needs to be highly secured. So things like encryption, things like two-factor authentication, and these kind of things are essential. And also obvious, the compliance element needs to be also addressed. So it's not easy. There are a number of processes and capabilities that need to be put in place when you want to do data exchange. And if I'm zooming out a little bit here, this building block here in blue is not in isolation of everything. It integrates into a data value chain. So before a data product can hit a marketplace, most probably there will be some work to be done, some preparation work, whether it's standardization, normalization, anonymization. There might be some analytics and work done on the data so it's more insights products rather than, I would say, raw data products that are exposed and exchanged. And last but not least, if data are being exchanged, it's not for the sake of exchanging data. It's for achieving some results, some business results, some data-driven use case. If we take an example, we're living in the crisis situation right now. And there are millions of possible use cases, but if, for example, a use case is optimizing drug availability as hospitals, that's, let's say, one use case. A startup in the health tech might have a great idea for building an app, but it needs to access some data. And this data, okay, you can go to open data portals, but it's not going to be enough. You will need to have access to data that pharma companies can provide, hospitals, government agencies, and so on. And it's sometimes not easy to get access to those data. By having some data exchange capability and marketplace formal in place, it is really helping a lot the process. And of course, if the question is about exchanging data from time to time as a one-to-one relationship, you probably don't need you need skills, you need competencies to do that, but you don't necessarily need tooling. But as soon as you think about industrializing the process, automating it for scaling purposes, it requires technology. And that is what we call the data exchange platforms. And this is exactly the core of our business at Dawex. And this is not something that we think we are the only to think about. That it's just been confirmed by research firms. Gartner recently, in its data analytics survey for 2020, is showing that an increasing number of large organizations, so 35% from their perspective by 2022, will be either seller or buyer data via formal online data marketplace, increasing from last year, which was meant to be 25%. So this is really important. And maybe we could spend a few minutes now in talking about this time, data exchange platform example, which can be implemented in different ways.
Yes, now you should have gotten a good understanding of how your organization fits into the ecosystem of data exchange. So let's have a look at some classic platform examples. The first one is our own. It's a Dawex global market data marketplace. And at Dawex, it's always been our intention to build a global and agnostic community. This global data marketplace is the largest community of companies that are interested in data exchange and monetization. The platform encompasses more than 20 different industry sectors, 10,000 different companies, and the unique focus of the platform is to focus on corporates and smaller enterprises over data brokers and vendors. And this is done in order to ensure the quality of the data directly from the source. But there are also many regional and initiatives, as you see here on the slide. One of them is Amsterdam Data Exchange. There's a Smart Dubai, and then there's a Korean data exchange. And that one is quite interesting because the government of Korea has co-founded $130 million to build 10 cross-vertical data exchange platforms, as well as providing the SMEs and startups with coupons in order to purchase data. Another interesting example is the Japanese data exchange. And the reason this is interesting is that this is a private initiative, but it is launched by the push of a global Japanese initiative. And the Japanese government has decided to move into what they call Society 5.0, which is very strong data economy. And it's been powered or will be powered by secure cross-border data flows. Another example is API Agro, which is an API Agro platform, a data exchange platform for the agricultural sector. It is a mix between the French European initiative. It's currently live and running, and there are more than 100 participants. It's interesting as well because it's both private and public, and it runs very effortlessly with subscription-based, and it's steadily growing. A second example, which is unfortunately very relevant at the moment, is a COVID-19 data exchange platform. And we see now during this pandemic that having the ability and capability to share data across platforms from researchers, scientists, and hospitals, and even back to startups, as Didier mentioned earlier, everybody can have a play in this. It's not always for monetization. It's also for supporting cases like this, but also to prepare for the future. And in this case, we built a platform with support from Deloitte and Microsoft and other large organizations to help the crisis we're in now, but also for the aftermath of the crisis.
So, that being said, and thank you, Anne, for these examples. What we would like to share now as we're moving further in the presentation and the discussion is to bring you some key advice, some best practice that we believe are important if you want to get started in structuring a data exchange capability within your organization. And we have 3 of them. We could list more, but we just picked 3 that we believe important. The first one is to really, you have to think strategically about data exchange. You have to start with the why. You have to start answering questions like, what do you want to achieve with data exchange and why you would do that? We've seen in a previous slide that you have different possibility of leveraging data exchange in your organization. And by the way, these are not mutually exclusive, and they are not fixed forever. So these can change and these can be combined as objectives. But really it's about what do you want to do? What do you want to facilitate access to data for your teams internally and have access to more data externally in a controlled way? Is that your priority? Or do you want to see the opportunity of generating new revenue from your data? Because lots of people might be prepared to pay for accessing your data, but not in a way that it's not being controlled. And you might be ready to do that as far as you have some control on the process. But you could also have a more global objective, like you'd like to secure some leadership position in your industry, in the data exchange ecosystem, in this emerging data economy, by being a data exchange orchestrator, by choosing to be central and not a participant to existing data exchanges, which can be, by the way, business in itself, generating new revenue, but also have very interesting impact, like increasing your brand equity. Another advice that we could make is, as you move with one of those scenarios, and this one that we picked as an example is the one which is related to generating new revenue stream in your organization, by working with our clients and also reading some good materials and resources. I'm thinking of the Infonomics book from and work from Dr. Laney, which is so we've built some approach that we believe are very efficient and very pragmatic, iterative approach, where basically in an organization, you could start just exploring in a high level, quick, fast, but an ideation process, identifying great ideas to leverage data internally and externally. And of course, those many ideas, you have to assess them and prioritize them. Some may be realistic, some may not. So there's a process there. And when you have identified some great ideas, some of them, you just zoom in on those. You start looking at what are the data that you have that can be very useful for implementing that use case. Do you need some data that you don't have, and where to find it? And you start thinking about subjects like data quality. How are you going to ensure the data quality? How are you going to ensure security and compliance when you're delivering those data, et cetera, et cetera? And this part is sometimes very new to organizations. It's think data exchange from a data marketing, product marketing perspective. Like for any other products in your organization, you start thinking about who might be interested by this data product and why. How am I going to deliver the data? Is there any competition? I mean, is there any other organization already doing that or not? And what about the packaging, the pricing, the licensing options, and how am I going to promote and communicate around that? So it's preparation, it's planning work that needs to be done. And then you're getting to the operational part. So this is where typically using a data exchange platform, either yours or the platform that you are a participant to, you'll package data offering, specify the terms of use, you will want to publish when you want to publish it. You will launch marketing campaign. You will have a push and a pull approach, like responding to requests, but contacting proactively potential buyers, and you'll negotiate some deals. And last but not least, we all know that if you don't measure, you can't manage. So you have to obviously measure the success of your marketing campaigns, the activity on the marketplace, how many searched, who's been contacting, the engagement level, et cetera, et cetera. Our recommendation: start with low-hanging fruits, iterate fast, and expand progressively. So it's not a big bang approach. You don't have to spend months and months in doing the first thing like a data inventory. Do it in a very, very dynamic way. That's our recommendation. And there's a third recommendation, and we'll ask Anne to just go through it.
Yeah, one thing that we find is very important, because this is such a fairly new field, it is to educate yourself and get involved in order to learn, but also to help the industry of data exchange. We have started a global nonprofit association around exactly data exchange. And we set it up in Luxembourg together with PwC and a lawyer who specialized in digital legislations. So DXA, or the Data Exchange Association, has been born through the need of aligning innovation with the regulations in order to foster sustainable growth in the data economy. We believe that by bringing together the right people, we can design and push the data policies in order to foster sustainable development and innovation. We want to ensure ethical and scalable standards and regulations. The organization truly is cross-industry and cross-global, as it unites both public and private organizations, such as large corporations, but also research institutions, governments, and other nonprofit associations. That being said, get yourself involved, help push this to the right direction. We don't want to lose momentum for the sake of innovation. We know that innovation and technology moves very fast. We need to get this on a sustainable level and have legislation, and legislations follow that as well. We very strongly believe in this cause, and we all invite you to join us in our organization, in our nonprofit. Please come send us an email. Our address is there. Send me an email if you have questions, or visit us at the booth here, the virtual booth, and we'll answer all your questions.
Thank you, Anne. I think it's time now for some key takeaways. So if you had to remember just a few bullet points from our presentation, and obviously we'll be able to continue the conversation later on. We picked those one. The first one is that you have to move the data, move your data inside and outside your organization. This is essential to create value. And we've seen that, especially in the midst of the COVID-19 crisis that we live today, and we may be in there for quite some time, sharing, accessing the data is essential in order to build useful data-driven use cases. The second takeaway, we believe, is that you really have to consider data exchange much more than just the actual exchange of the data, because there are many other processes involved, which are marketing, procurement, financial, logistic, IT, and legal. So you have to have access to those skills embedded that into the process of data exchange. So you have to think that way when you are implementing data exchange in your organization. Thirdly, is that, as I was saying earlier, if it's just ad hoc exchange of data with external party here and there, probably you don't need lots of technology. But as soon as you are serious about it, that you have identified it from a strategic perspective as something to do in your organization, that you are implementing it and willing to scale the activity of data exchange, you definitely need to put in place some data exchange platform technology to support the process. And last but not least, and I was also mentioning that a few slides back, you have to decide where your organization fits into the data exchange ecosystem. So it's really, do you want to be a participant to existing data exchange, one or several, or do you want to play or do you want to play the role of an orchestrator and leverage the benefits that you can have from that positioning as an orchestrator in the emerging data economy? And because this is a moving target, the world is changing, the data economy is growing, everything is evolving very fast. Obviously, you need to reassess your position on a regular basis. And that ends up our presentation. And we're happy to take some questions from the audience. And of course, come and visit us at our virtual booth. Thank you.
Didier and Anne, thank you both for a great presentation. And I'm going to start out with a couple of questions right away. I know there's probably going to be some more coming in as people get their link into Slido and everything like that set up on this. But Didier, we've known each other for a while, and you've watched this business evolve over years. Are you, I'm hoping you have the answer that I'm looking for here, which is that now the market looks like it's mature enough. I mean, can you imagine trying to convince somebody that this type of a capability would be, you know, something appropriate for them to invest in 10 years ago? And nowadays we're seeing it's a must-have, I think, if I listen to you guys.
It is actually a must-have. It is, though the market though is not completely mature. It's evolving fast. So when we started in 2015, the company, and in 2017, the first implementation of the data exchange as we define it with the global marketplace, we were thousands of miles away of where we are now. Some people were thinking, yeah, what are you talking about? Okay, fine. But it was pretty new. Now we see that really maturing in the organizations, and organizations are seeing the importance of not addressing that tactically, but more strategically. But there's still way to go, and that's our bet also as a company, is to accompany the organizations as they move into their maturity level on the subject. One of the things that we did, for example, with our platform that we have developed, is to provide features and functionality that will be helpful no matter the maturity of the organization, so that they can start engaging very early with potential acquirers, for example, if they are a data provider, without having solved all the aspects of having data ready to be distributed and consumed, or having addressed all the aspects which are about the pricing and the packaging and so on, but start engaging early in the process so that you can test the attractiveness of some ideas. So that has been very key when we developed our solutions, to have that ability to follow and to serve companies that are at any type of maturity level on the subject.
We do see them all over the place as well. Maybe another question here, having to do with, you were talking about whether when companies look at this, it's not strictly a technical exercise, but it's very much of a holistic exercise, needing to bring in people from marketing and all the others. The word fiduciary is being thrown about with respect to data exchanges. How do you guys feel about that? Fiduciary is, of course, somebody has a duty. Again, if I disclose information to a medical doctor, how does that go into the role of these data exchanges as you guys see them?
So it is true that there are a number of questions that are being discussed and regarding the role of a data exchange orchestrator operator and the responsibility on the data. Some data can be sensible. There might be some regulation around. And so this is a subject of interest. We are part of the, since this year, we are working with the World Economic Forum, and we are part of the data policy group where we're bringing some insights and input and sharing with others. This is typically a topic that is being discussed quite a lot. We also work, we're very close to the European Commission as part of different work groups on the subject. So it is a real topic. The approach that we've taken is to really stimulate and help the parties, so the providers and the acquirers of data, to have full accountability, to be accountable of what they're doing. So it's not necessarily the data exchange orchestrator, the operator of the exchange, that needs to be in a certain way neutral, and the responsibility for doing the right thing resides on the data providers and the data acquirer. The way we are doing is that we're supporting them by embedding in the processes a number of checklists and checkpoints and putting some guardrails so that the parties can be aware of the responsibility taking when exchanging data. So, but it's a vast subject, which we could have a full session.
Absolutely. Well, let's keep going with the questions that are coming in off the piece here. First of all, somebody made the comment that they just saw that Dawex has been named a tech pioneer by the World Economic Forum. So congratulations. And the question is, what does this mean for your company?
It means a lot, especially because you don't ask for that. I mean, there's you don't apply for that. You get a phone call one day and say, we picked you. So that was very great news for us. And a confirmation also, as I was saying earlier, when we started the company and we launched the first platform, we had many questions. Is it really, are we really solving problems? Is there really a need on the market for structuring data exchanges? And we had those confirmations first by seeing how rapidly the community has been growing on the global marketplace, but interest with the data exchange platform initiative that have been launched using the technology. And now it's more about when the World Economic Forum is awarding us, it's even to a next level. It's more global. So it's really something that means something that has an impact globally on the market, on people. So it's very on companies, on people. So it was very rewarding. We were very happy.
Excellent. Well, again, congratulations with that. Here's a great question. There's often fear around data exchange. How do you help companies navigate internal politics and fear to get this going?
Fear is one of the key friction points. And generally, it's because of the lack of clarity on the subject. Companies or executives in the companies may fear opening up their data to others. They hear about regulations, they don't know what they can do, what they cannot do. The question, or there are other questions, well, how much is worth my data? How much should I price it? And it can be seen from the other way. When I'm sourcing data from the outside, do I take some risk? If you think about hedge funds and asset management firms, they have such a strict vetting process when they're acquiring data from external sources. They want to know everything. How did you get the data? How am I sure that you have the rights to provide this data to us, et cetera, et cetera. So there is some kind of fear somewhere, but this is really why we are here on the market. We are helping structuring, helping influencing also, and working at every level. It starts from the a user-friendly tool to use when you are exchanging data with a number of guidelines, tips, guide rails, et cetera, to a broader perspective when we're working with institutions for working on subjects that will turn into laws and regulations that are there not to block the market, but to secure the market and to make it more comfortable for circulating the data. So there is fear, and that was the situation a few years back, for sure. It is evolving now in the good direction, and we're very, very confident for the future.
Excellent. Next question is, sounds like somebody's trying to do some business intelligence in your area. They say, what kinds of industries are ahead on data exchange, and who are the laggards who has not caught up yet? I don't know if you have that kind of intelligence in the marketplace, but somebody's asked the question.
Basically, if we look at the data exchange that we operate, so that we have good insights on it, it has been pretty successful very broadly in many industry sectors. More than 20 have been represented. Some are more advanced, either on the buy side, on the sell side. I was mentioning the financial community. They've been used to acquire data for years. So they have structured organization for that. They have special teams that are separated. So you have data acquisition teams, which are like a procurement department. They are specializing in identifying the external data sources, having the first negotiations, get the trial data, and then this is passed to the data people, the data team. So they are pretty mature there. And by the way, they are heavy users of those marketplaces for spotting the new data sources that they could potentially use. They're always on the search for alternative data. On the provider side, you have companies that have been exchanging data for quite some time now. Take a retailer, they will share their data with their suppliers. That's something, and generally they have been building their own channel in order to do that. Now, when it comes to expanding to new types of potential acquirer, this is probably something which is newer. So I cannot say precisely like this is really an industry that is much more mature than the others. I think every organization in a way or another have been exchanging data and is exchanging data. The point is how they are structuring this in their organization, how they are identifying that process as a key process to manage, just like you manage marketing function, just like you manage your procurement function, do you manage the data exchange function? And that is probably something pretty new for most organizations.
I would say that's correct with my observations of the market as well. A question, have you had any public or not-for-profit customers who wanted to monetize their data? Well, I guess to say everybody would want to monetize their data, but have you guys directly interacted with any of them?
We see interest more and more from public organizations that typically have been launching open data portal. Has been it was a hot topic a few years ago. And so you have many open data portal. The problem with open data portal, when you just rely on that, it's great because you make data available. It needs to be there, but it's also very expensive to operate, to put some clean data available. It costs a lot of money, and it's public money also. So sometimes you wonder, if you want to leave it open to anybody, including the corporates that take advantage of some data for profit, whereas you might have a hybrid approach. And that has been an important subject that we addressed in our solutions, is that we are capable of offering the opportunity for any organization to share data under different terms and conditions, including open data license or commercial license, and choose. And sometimes, so for the moment, there's a lot of thinking in the public sector. It's hard to move to the next phase, to move to some hybrid approach where you see the value of the data that you have and that you can leverage it and make it available in different ways on the market. So yes, when we were showing these initiatives in the regional initiatives, there were a few initiatives there which are publicly driven. This is typically a topic that they've been considering when launching those initiatives.
Great, thank you. This is a thoughtful question. Before providing data that we collect in order to provide core service, we need to make sure we are actually allowed to share that data. Any thoughts or advice? And I'll be glad to read it again if that's...
Yeah, it's a very important point. This is why in the suggestions or the best practice when you get started, that we were putting very early on in the process. So the idea is to not thinking too much about this issue when you start doing some ideation. What could we do with data? How we could create value? You have to have a very open and broad mind when you do that. But as soon as you've identified those ideas, you have to ask those questions and dig on the subject and get advice and involve the legal department. And if they don't have, they're not necessarily specialized in everything regarding data, get external advice. But you have to start thinking broadly without too much consideration to that, but then rapidly just to see if there are constraints there or issues, so that you could possibly just say, this idea was great, but we will not pursue it because of that issue, and we will pick that one. Or maybe it's a non-problem. We were afraid, but after checking and getting advice, we realized that it's not an issue. The potential issue are mostly when there are some personal data involved, PII. Sometimes can be sensible data or data that are too competitive that you don't want to share outside. Generally, the first level of decision can be very common sense. It needs to be taken early. And sometimes you need to be a little bit more deep dive into more legal aspects. PII.
Sorry about the echo, that was my equipment messing up.
I have a comment on that as well. So if you, for example, are an OEM and you want to acquire data from your end users, or you are an equipment manufacturer, you can use this point of collecting and using their data as a negotiation point. You don't want to end up in a point where you're actually trying to collect data and then they're technically stopping you from collecting it. So taking this as an advantage early on in the stage can actually give you benefits on several points. Collecting data and using data doesn't have to be a negative thing for your end customers.
To what you guys can do. One of them says, first of all, great talk on this, and they're very excited about the ability to installation of schemas and how the role of data governance playing in that technical exercise. The other one question is, who are the key interlocutors in a company?
Great question. Actually, we're talking with different, it depends on the organizations, obviously, and the size. Officers, innovation executives are very often involved in those initiatives. Companies that are looking, could be looking for new, it could be related to corporate strategy also. It can be at the very top. One of our implementation projects in Japan, the Japan Data Exchange, is actually big conglomerate organizations, and it's the president of, it's a trading organization. So they've been trading goods, physical goods, for years. They started with wool, then they've been trading car parts, electronic parts. And the president was asking itself, okay, we've been very successful over the last year with the electronic parts. What is the next good of value that will be traded? and he thought about data. So through the innovation department, this project, which turns into the Japan Data Exchange, but that was really driven from the top. So there are different situations, but the top executive, CDO, Chief Strategy Officer, Chief Innovation Officer.
Great. Well, we're out of time, unfortunately. Again, I want to thank Anne and Didier for a really nice presentation to kick off our session tracks. And immediately we're going to go to lunch, unless some of you are going to join people in the yoga session. So we'll all meet back here at 2 p.m. And again, I want to thank our presenters at this point, and I'm sure they have many more stories to tell. So please do stop by their booth and listen to some of the stories. I'm curious about the Japan story right away. But thank you both. We do need to run.
Thank you.